when I see stuff like this, I can't help but laugh because of how ridiculous it is. But let's go over it here. Why not? All right, so here's an article from Bounding Into Comics. Link is in the description below. As always, Marvel Shang-Chi star Simu Liu reportedly refusing to sign offensive Master of Kung Fu comics at upcoming AwesomeCon 2022. Marvel Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Ring star has reportedly made it clear that he will not be signing any issues of Master of Kung Fu, the series in which the hand-to-hand combat master made his debut during his upcoming appearance at this year's entry of AwesomeCon, out of concern that such comics are offensive. It says here, according to CBR, the self-proclaimed savior of aspirational Asian representation has added a new stipulation to the writer for his June 4th appearance at the upcoming Washington, D.C.-based convention, declaring that he will not sign Master of Kung Fu comics or other comics deemed offensive. So that seems pretty specific, right? Though the comic book news outlet did not identify what specific content Liu has taken issue with, given the recent discourse surrounding the classic Marvel series, it's likely the actor has subscribed to the belief that its depiction such characters as Shang-Chi and Fu Manchu, despite them being portrayed as a hero who rebels against his evil father and an awesomely skilled evil mastermind, respectively, are nothing more than shallow artist caricatures. So you see here, cover of Shang-Chi number 41 or 44, I should say, from back in the day. This is far from the first time following his casting as the deadly hand that Liu has taken in, I think it's Liu or Liu, either way, has taken an eye-rolling performative action to position himself as a properly socially conscious champion for acceptable Asian representation. In light of the news, the television series in which he gained attention for Kim's convenience had been canceled by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Liu said that he resented the show's overwhelmingly white producers because they did not take input on the script from the actors. Interesting. It's always my understanding that the lead actors were the stewards of the character and would grow to have more creative insight as the show went on, wrote the actor in a June 2021 Facebook post. This was not the case on our show, which was doubly confusing because our producers were overwhelmingly white and we were a cast of Asian Canadians who had a plethora of lived experiences to draw from it and offer to the writers. But when we were often told of the next season's plans mere days before we were set to start shooting, there was deliberately not a leeway given to us, he additionally accused. 2 months later, Liu took disingenuous issue with comments made by Disney CEO Bob Chapek during the company's Q3 earnings call, wherein discussion of the decision to release Shang-Chi and Free Guide to Disney Plus after only 45 days in theaters, the executive opined, on Shang-Chi, we think it's actually going to be an interesting experiment for us because it's got only a 45-day window for us, he added, so the prospect of being able to take a Marvel title to service after going theatrical within 45 days will be another data point to inform our actions going forward on our titles. When we planned Shang-Chi, the title was planned on being released in a much more healthy theatrical environment, he concluded, and at this point, unfortunately, due to distribution agreements that we have due to just the practicalities of last-minute changes, it wouldn't be possible. Though Chapek was clearly referring to Shang-Chi's experimental release schedule, Liu accused the CEO was using the term in reference to the fact that the film was Asian-centric. We are not an experiment, he tweeted. We are the underdog, the underestimated. He continued, we are the ceiling breakers. We are the celebration of culture and joy that will persevere. After an embattled year, we are the surprise. I'm tired. This F-up to make history on September 3rd. Join us. I mean, look, just real quick, I want to say this. As far as Shang-Chi goes, right, not a terrible movie. I watched it. Kind of boring, in my opinion. Interesting that a lot of well, I'll get into that in just a moment, but I will say this. The movie's success was mediocre in comparison to what Disney is usually used to. Now, they could try to make it seem all they want. Oh, well, it didn't bomb at the box office. It doesn't matter. It wasn't like this huge, massive success either. It was the performance of the movie was mediocre at best in terms of numbers in the box office. They've done way, way, way better. Like I said before, look, and this has nothing to do with just Shang-Chi specifically. The bloom is pretty much off the rose with superhero movies, the MCU. I mean, once, that first generation of movies that were pretty interesting and where they're heading now and the ideas that they have heading forward are not going to resonate with a whole lot of people, in my opinion. Look, I could be wrong, but so far they're not off to a great start. You know what I mean? So, and, people can say, well, Spider-Man, but, Spider-Man was still part of that old guard of MCU movies. And again, that's not even completely under Disney right now. That's something that they're essentially working with Sony to bring to people. So, let's continue on here, though. Further speaking at the film's red carpet premiere a few days after this bad faith interpretation of Chapek's words, Lee boasted that his performance as Shang-Chi would finally give audiences an aspirational Asian character to look up to. See, that to me, that's so narcissistic and arrogant to say, right? Such an arrogant thing to say, like completely dismissing the fact that there was people that already had these aspirational Asian characters to look up to, that Bruce Lee played, that Jackie Chan played, that people like Gordon Liu, that people like Jet Li, you know what I mean? The list goes on, of Sonny Chiba, all these people that came before him that really kind of laid the groundwork, that people know who they are, you know what I mean? Simu Liu is going to be Simu Liu, right? The guy who played a fourth or fifth string Marvel character at best. This is probably, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll do something way better, right? That he'll one day win an Oscar for. I don't know. But at least for right now, I mean, he's nowhere near close to being in that same category, right? He played a character again that honestly, if not anything else, I don't think that Shang-Chi was deserving of the character of Shang-Chi was deserving of its own movie in terms of popularity. You know what I mean? That's something that they probably could have made a TV show out of, or they could have introduced him a lot sooner to build up to making him a movie, but just dropping a Shang-Chi movie out of nowhere without more build-up, I think that might have helped Shang-Chi's numbers in the box office. You know what I mean? Because Shang-Chi, I mean, truthfully speaking, the common, the casual, they'll know who Spider-Man is. They'll know who Hulk is. They'll know who Captain America is. They'll know who some of these other characters are, right? That are a little bit more mentioned. Like, nobody knew who Shang-Chi was. You know what I mean? For the most part, there's a lot of casuals that had no clue who Shang-Chi was until this movie came out. Had never heard of him before. Spoke to some people. They had no clue who Shang-Chi was. Unless you're a comic book reader and like have been a comic book reader for a long time, specifically Marvel, you're probably not going to know who Shang-Chi are. You probably know who Katana is from DC more than you know who Shang-Chi is, right? Because at least Katana, from what I've seen, Katana has had way more exposure in, film and other kinds of media than Shang-Chi has, than Marvel has done with Shang-Chi. So, could be wrong about that, but at least for me, I mean, that's what I've seen. But like I said, I could be completely wrong. It's a beautiful and exciting new origin story for this character that a lot of the world hasn't heard of before. Liu told Total Film Magazine, and it means that kids growing up today will have what I didn't, which are characters that are aspirational that also reflect their lived experience. That's such bullshit. That to me is such a dismissive and depreciative thing to say. You know what I mean? It's like, to me, that's a bit of a slap in the face to the people that came before him. Like I said, to Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, Jet Li, Gordon Liu, people like that. That's a slap in the face to them. The fact that he would say something like that. Doubling down on his undeserved declaration of himself as a historical figure in both Asian and modern cinema in general, Liu would assert in a September 2021 Reddit AMA in 2012, when I first started out, I thought that maybe if I worked really hard, I could be a guy that gets beaten up by one of the main characters one day. That was the pinnacle for actors that look like me. Oh my God. Like, see, this is what I mean. This is like this kind of shit. This is so weird, right? See, he bizarrely claimed, ignoring the decades worth of Asian cinema and television stars whose native works became Western fan favorites. I'm ashamed to say that I've put on the most ridiculous and offensive accents in the past, all because I thought that it was more important to give the casting director what they wanted than to be true to myself. He continued, over time, as I toiled about it in the industry and struggled to find my footing, I started to realize all the ways the industry discriminated against us and that we needed to become the masters of our own narrative, because the way we were being portrayed was not positive or authentic. That's why representation behind the camera is just as important as in front of the camera, he concluded. See, this is the problem here with people like this. And look, he can feel how he wants to feel, but it's dumb. This whole virtue signaling shit that these actors do to prop themselves up more as these heroes and stuff like that. They they um uh, they have this unearned sense of self-importance. You know what I mean? You haven't been through. You can make it seem like, oh, I've been in this business for a long time and I've paid my dues and stuff like that. Yo, imagine being Bruce Lee back in the 70s, doing this stuff. He had it way tougher. That's why he went to Hong Kong to start filming stuff, because he wasn't getting a fair shake in Hollywood around the time that he was trying to be a struggling actor. So, to make it seem like look, I'm sure that to some degree, some of the things he's saying is true. That there's still probably some biases and some things that do hold him back, right? But nowhere near on the same level. You know what I mean? And to be just dismissive of the people that really paved the way for him and other Asian actors or Asian American actors or Asian Canadian actors or wherever they're from, right? To be so dismissive about that is, I think, in my opinion, it's disrespectful and a slap in the face. So, interestingly, past depictions of characters that fail to meet modern standards of political correctness are not the only thing Liu has chosen to ignore in recent months, as outside of two vague tweets attempting to deflect the subsequent attention given to him, the actor, as well as Disney, has remained silent on a slew of previously commented wherein he penned a self-described sympathetic post towards, we all heard about that one. I remember that, and I think that's where we'll stop this article here. But this whole thing, right? He might have not specified Master of Kung Fu Comics, but obviously I guess it was CBR that felt that it was that way. And look, in fairness to Simu Liu, he doesn't have to sign anything he doesn't want to, that he's not comfortable with. I mean, if somebody pays their money, he should sign something, obviously. But if he doesn't want to sign old issues of Master of Kung Fu, that's fine. He doesn't have to, because there have been plenty of times where I've been to conventions where I've seen actors that haven't wanted to sign certain pieces of media or prints or whatever, because they're not comfortable with it for whatever reason. That's fine. They can do that. If he doesn't want to do that, that's fine. And truthfully, people shouldn't expect him to, right? Because I guess in a sense it does go in line with the person he portrays himself to be, right? This really kind of just righteous West Coast wokey that is out to fight for the greater good. So what would anybody expect? To me, this kind of falls in line with the way he's portrayed himself to be. So I'm not surprised if he doesn't want to sign this stuff. And truthfully, like I said, he doesn't have to. That's fine. He could refuse to sign that stuff, and people could bring him something else. It's just dumb, considering the character's history, and considering the fact here's why else I think it's kind of stupid that he won't sign these old comics, because if he thinks that it's because they're depicted as caricatures and things like that. What's interesting to me is I saw Shang-Chi, and there's a lot of tropes in that movie. I found it to be like any other kung fu movie. You know what I mean? In that regard, Disney was really trying, or Disney Marvel was really trying to make another, at least in my opinion, typical kung fu movie with the way certain things played out. There's a lot of tropes in that movie, things that you could still look at and say were somewhat stereotypical of kung fu movies and things like that. So it's just like, so why is that okay, right? And I'm not saying that they went as far as like write these old comic books, right? Where you have a character literally named Fu Manchu and things like that. But I wonder why he didn't have so much of a problem with that, right? But, the old school comics are super, super problematic. I guess it's because it's more in your face back then, right? When you have somebody called Fu Manchu, but whatever. It's, to me, I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but if that's the hill he wants to die on, I say let him. And if it's one that he ends up, if it's a hill he ends up dying on alone, then it is what it is. So, what do you guys think about this? Let me know in the comment section below. I don't care. I think it's just stupid. It's just more virtue signaling by a guy who is way too high on himself, you know what I mean, and has an unearned sense of self-importance, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Regardless of what he's done, he could say, "Well, I've been in a lead in a Hollywood blockbuster movie." Okay, bro. You know what I mean? It's just like eventually, it's one of those movies. To me, at least, Shang-Chi is not the worst MCU movie. It's because it's not. Just being honest here, it's definitely not the worst MCU movie, but it's not a really memorable one either. I think it's ultimately gonna be a really forgettable movie. And think about all the stuff that they had to do with Shang-Chi, the character, for the movie to make him more interesting, to make him more than just a guy that just does martial arts. They had to give him, they had to use this 10 ring powers. They had to essentially give him an extra gimmick to be able to sell him to a mass audience. You know what I mean? So there you go. You know what could have done that without them having to do that? Just really good writing. But anyways, I mean, look, like I said, not the worst thing, not the worst MCU movie out there, not by far, but to me it's just it's whatever. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Until next time, y'all know how it goes. The hunt continues.